I am in the mayor's conference room. However, everybody else is virtual by Zoom. Can we get a roll call, please?
Thank you. Mr. Fox.
Present.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Present.
Mr. Stinson.
Present.
Mr. Clark.
Present.
Mr. Avery.
Present.
Thank you. We are all present.
Thank you. I hope everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes of the meeting of May the 26th of 2020. If you don't have anything further to add, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the May 26 minutes.
Okay, we'll just reverse that. If Roger will get him and let Mr. Fox speak.
Okay.
If you're okay with that. And we'll seek Chad, we're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, we're going to seek to approve the docket, kind of. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, we'll do that. There is one change to old business. It looks like BZA-20-13 is requested to table. Other than that, we have the others on the docket are staying in place. Can I have a motion to approve the docket?
So moved.
All righty. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And Chad, if we need to move forward with, go ahead.
Mr. Avery.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Stinson.
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Aye.
Mr. Fox.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
At this point in time, for anyone who will be speaking during the meeting, presenting a docket, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Merkley to administer the oath.
If you could please unmute your buttons and raise your right hand, and I'll administer the oath. Do you affirm under the penalties of perjury that your testimony will be truthful to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do. I
do. And if you would, when you come forward or when you do speak this evening, prior to speaking, please acknowledge on the record that you did accept the oath.
Thank you, Mr. Merkley. At this point in time, we'll move on to old business. We're going to move into BZA-20-14. JT Development LLC filed a development standards variance application for properties at 3700 and 3906 Cooper's Lane. The property is zoned R1, which is residential. The proposed subdivision of Cooper's Crossing will have 97 lots. The docket number is BZA-20-14. Do we have representation?
Yes, Mr. President. John Kraft of the law firm of Young, Lind, and Kraft, 126 Spring Street in New Albany, appearing on behalf of the applicant. Likewise, Jason Copperwhite with Primavera and Associates is here on the project who will accompany me. As you indicated, this is a development standards variance. In this particular instance, and not that it has a bearing upon what occurs before the Board of Zoning Appeals, but this matter was before the Plan Commission this evening with regards to the preliminary plat. With that preliminary plat, there was a waiver with respect to the side setbacks for purposes of this development. The three development standards variances that we're requesting this evening before the BZA happen to deal with minimum lot area, minimum lot width, and maximum lot coverage. As indicated by Mr. McCutcheon, this is a 97 lot subdivision. Many people would look at that and say, well, 97 lots, why are you seeking a variance? Ultimately, this subdivision brings into consideration 10.3 acres of green space that will be green space for a common area for the development. If we looked at this from the overall standards as to by right, by acreage, this development could be somewhere between 122 to 162 lots. The developer is desirous of taking this development, taking 10.3 acres of green space, giving that to the homeowners association to use, and then ultimately take the numbers down to 97 lots. In doing so, that would take the minimum lot width, the maximum lot frontage, and the maximum lot coverage would require variances. As you are aware, under Indiana Code 36749184, we look at the approval and the elements to look at primarily deal with public health, safety, morals, and general welfare, use and value of the area, as well as strict application of the terms of the ordinance will result in practical difficulties. When we look at that, certainly the Plan Commission heard a number of items with regards to drainage as well as traffic, those items. But I think you also have to look at the fact that with this development and the variances being requested, rather than looking at 122 lots or 162 lots, the development will only be 97 lots. Mr. Copperwaite may touch on the value, but again, we're looking at a value that will be equal to and or greater in most instances than surrounding developments. And we did have several individuals appear in the Plan Commission that spoke of the fact that they believe that this will increase the value of their property. And then likewise, as it relates to the practical difficulty piece of the ordinance or piece of the development requirements and the statute, if we develop it as it is and develop it by right and went to the larger number of lots, this would require fill in some flood areas, which is not prohibited under your ordinance. So the result tends to be the developer is looking to try to take this, make it a friendly subdivision with regards to green space, taking the number of lots to 97, which is less than by right. But yet, even though it is less than by right, it still puts them in a position to need those requirements. This is what the market is currently doing. This is what buyers are looking for. They're looking for the smaller lots. They don't want a great deal of maintenance and upkeep, but yet they will have access to the green space, the 10.3 acres that is being platted. I'll let Jason Copperwaite address the issues that I've touched on with regards to the development as well as the plat itself, and answer any questions that you may have with regards to those three variances from his perspective.
Sure. So these developers are also developing Williams Crossing, which is just to the south of the project. I guess let me take a step back. This is 40.7 acres on Cooper's Lane. It is southwest of Creekstone Ridge, northwest of Williams Crossing. It features an entrance on Cooper's Lane, a connection to Limestone Trace, and then two connections into Williams Crossing PUD. The lots are on average 50 by 120, which matches what's being developed in Williams Crossing plan unit development. The intent is for this development basically to match the development quality of Williams Crossing. Those homes are selling between somewhere, and as will be developed here, somewhere between $265,000 and $350,000. The developer shared with me this afternoon that they've sold 3 houses in Williams Crossing in the $320,000 range, and they have 28 of these lots in Williams Crossing under contract. So it's a very desirable product in the city of Jeffersonville. John touched on the density. If you'll remember, this agenda item was on your agenda a couple times before, but was tabled voluntarily by the developers. They did that in order to have some neighborhood meetings. A couple of weeks ago, we had a neighborhood meeting at the end of the cul-de-sac at Williams Crossing Way. That was all delayed because of the virus, but we wanted to have those meetings. The 3 biggest concerns we heard at those meetings, which I think were also shared at the Plan Commission meeting, were density, the connection at Limestone Trace, and drainage. Of course, this will have to go through your drainage board, but I think we're able to take the majority of the drainage from this area that could potentially cause problems for neighbors and take it into a very large detention basin that's going to be down in that common area A. That'll be green and maintained that way in perpetuity. The Plan Commission approved the connection into Creekstone Ridge, and then the density, as John mentioned earlier, is less than what would otherwise be described be allowed as by right. I think that's all I have, unless there are questions or comments.
At this point in time, we will move for public comment. If, Chad, do you have anything in the letters to deal with?
Yes.
I want to address those.
Yes. So we heard a large number of letters read into the record at the Plan Commission regarding this subdivision, or I should say regarding the preliminary plat for this subdivision in order to save a number of an amount of time, a certain amount of time here. Sorry, let me say that again. In order to save a certain amount of time here, I am reading only the portions of the letters that really apply here to the variance requested. So Gene Ball at 4208 Patricia Drive has concerns that the proposed 97 homes or lots, as he recalls, are far too many dwellings for such a small plot of land. Bringing 97 homes into this development will cause more traffic on roads that already struggle to accommodate the neighborhoods in the area. The development will affect hundreds of homeowners, taxpayers living in the area, and he opposes having so many houses on this parcel. He opposes reducing the recommended lot size from 70 feet to 50 feet. Jerry Ewell writes to us that with a quick look at the Creekstone Ridge neighborhood on the northeast property line of the proposed plat from Google Earth, in comparison to the proposed plat in Cooper's Crossing, you'll notice a relative difference in the number of homes per acre that currently exists. The number of houses per acre in the proposed development at the 3800 block of Cooper Lane should be reconsidered based on the drainage issues on this property alone. However, were the builder to adhere to the current zoning guidelines, 10,000 square foot lot per lot with 70-foot frontages, and ensure there would be no additional drainage water issues, he sees no reason why a revised version of the plan shouldn't go forward. Lisa and Charlie Garwood at 4211 Patricia Drive, write, Department of Planning and Zoning. Our home is directly impacted by this development, and we will have 12 new homes along our property line. Due to the immediate impact, we have a few concerns regarding the proposed future development known as Cooper's Crossing. Our first concern is with the proposed 97 lots in such a small plot of land. We oppose the number of homes being built and that the developers are proposing a variance for the lot sizes. Carol Simpson of 3325 Cooper's Lane writes, in regards to Cooper's Crossing development, my wife and I have some questions and concerns. First and foremost, referring to the plat itself, we see that 17 of the lots are totally or partially in the 100-year floodplain. A 5-foot side-to-side setback is shown but a 6-foot side setback is required. This will create a house that is the maximum 40-foot wide, requiring a variance. The 50-foot lot width would also require a variance from the 70-foot lot width required. An additional variance is needed to allow a minimum of 5,999 square foot lot from 10,000 square foot lot required now. 83 lots do not meet the 10,000 square foot required. Lots 46 and 47 should be eliminated to allow for a pull-off entrance on Cooper's Lane, similar to Peachtree Boulevard. We feel that the 100 lots is far too many for this size of property. It should be redesigned with approximately 50 houses at higher prices. We are against granting the above 3 variances. These needed variances to current requirements would also open the doors for other developers to squeeze in as many houses as possible into their purchased property. In summary, they are totally against this plan as presently laid out due to traffic concerns, building in the floodplain, and 3 excessive variance changes required. We recommend this plan not be approved until the developer can present a plan that falls within the current requirements and Cooper's Lane Road conditions are addressed. Thank you for your attention to these concerns, Carol Simpson. Patrick Lancaster of 4207 Patricia Drive writes, I have a few concerns I would like to be placed on record in regard to the future development of Cooper's Crossing located at 3800 block of Cooper's Lane. I live at the end of Patricia Drive, and my property is connected to the proposed development near the Common Area A and Common Trail. My concerns are as follows. 1, the lot sizes are required to be 70-foot wide instead of the proposed 50-foot wide. I am opposed to the lot sizes being smaller than standard lot size. The proposed lot sizes are too small, especially in comparison to neighborhoods in the surrounding areas. 2, 97 homes are going to create more traffic in the area that already has high traffic flow. Coopers Lane and Charlestown Jeffersonville Pike are not equipped to handle any more traffic. 3, the building of these homes will decrease the value of my current home. Thank you for taking my time to hear my concerns regarding the proposed development of Cooper's Crossing, Patrick Lancaster. Sarah Garwood writes, hello, members of the Jeffersonville community. I hope everyone is staying well during these times, and I appreciate your taking time to hear our concerns regarding the potential future development of Cooper's Crossing. My name is Sarah Garwood. I'm the daughter of Lisa and Charlie Garwood and a resident at 4211 Patricia Drive. My home will be immediately impacted by all the buildings surrounding our lot and therefore have some concerns. My first concern is the proposed 97 lots in the small area of land. In this area, I find that many of my neighbors deeply value the land and that we deeply value the land that we have and all the beauty that it brings. The proposed Cooper's Crossing neighborhood wants to place homes on 50-foot wide lots when the required is 70-foot wide lots. I am extremely opposed to this exception to the rule that developers are requesting. It is forcing these homes to be small and very close together, which in turn may not make them worth very much. In today's market, it is not likely that anyone will spend $250,000 plus on a small single-family home with a small yard, especially not with our current economic crisis and the time it will take for our country to come back from whatever is occurring. All our best, Sarah Garwood. Terry Gully from 4203 Patricia Drive writes, we moved here in 1991. What sold us was the large lots, and it was so quiet. There have been a lot of changes since then. The land behind us was farmland, which was sold to a developer to build houses. We were told there would be large lots and houses similar to ours. Instead, they are proposing 90-some houses on smaller lots. The drainage problems we have are terrible, and a couple's neighbors have so much water in their driveways they can't get to and from their houses when we have a hard rain. You guys keep building around here, and there is so much traffic and noise from the expressway, and the schools are overcrowded that my grandkids have to go to a public school. To build 97 houses on lots that are smaller than required is a matter of greed. I do not think it is a good idea to build so many houses on such small lots. Just because a builder can make a few extra dollars on another house doesn't make it a good idea. The minimum square feet per lot has been set for a reason. The only reason to decrease the size of the lots is pure greed, and we do not need it. Please take my opinion into consideration when asked to reduce the size of the lots. I appreciate you and the job you do for our city, Terry Gully. David Wilmot writes, I've lived in Jackson Heights since 1996, and since Georgia Crossing built in 2000 and the other neighborhoods have built off Charlestown Pike and Cooper's Lane, we have had issues with water runoff, people cutting through the neighborhood, throwing trash in our yards, but the main issues are with a development of this size and wanting to reduce the size of lots to 50 feet, the property values are sure to drop. More cut-throughs and traffic will be ridiculous. I don't think it's a good idea, and I am opposed. C. Davis from 3800 Cooper's Lane writes, to whom it may concern, I am writing to you as a concerned property owner at 3409 Cooper's Lane regarding the planned development of Cooper's Crossing. Here are my concerns. 1, since nearly half of the 40 acres will not be developed due to floodplain, electrical hazard area, and other issues, that will mean that approximately 20 acres would have 97 homes. This indicates to me that the homes will be valued at a reasonable low range of $150,000, give or take. I worry that it will lower the value of my property and the property of my neighbors. Road traffic safety is also an issue. Cooper's Lane is heavily trafficked and at times dangerous with the quarry trucks. With 97 homes, that would mean nearly 200 additional vehicles on this narrow road. I do not have a problem with developing the farms into single-family residential property. My conflict is with the total number of homes to be built, the loss of property value, the safety issues regarding traffic, and personal security with the increased property in our rural environment. Please consider reducing the number of new homes to less than half. Please reduce from 97 to no more than 40 to 50. This would reduce traffic, this would add acreage to each newly built home, and hopefully not reduce property values for all of us. Thank you in advance for your attention and consideration. Regards, C. Davis. Jason and Sarah Thompson write, as a concerned neighbor of the 3800 block of Cooper's Lane, we are opposed to the proposed rezoning of our property to be named Cooper's Crossing. We respectfully ask that no zoning change on this parcel. Our reasons include the proposal does not address increased use on already dangerous roads where drivers routinely speed. The proposed entrance and exit from Cooper's Lane is immediately across from a driveway that serves two houses. The proposal is not consistent with the surrounding properties on Cooper's Lane of larger single-family lots. The proposal would incur additional costs in our neighborhood and presents a significant threat to loss of property value at my property at 3815 Cooper's Lane. Sincerely, Jason and Sarah Thompson. Robert and Pamela Ellis write, it is our understanding that JT Development Group wants to build 97 homes at this location. This means that the lots are going to be very small. With small lots comes homes which will lower the value of our property and homes. We live on Patricia Drive and everyone here has around 2 to 4 acres. Building these overcrowded new homes is just adding to the already congested traffic in the area. Everyone goes down Charlestown Pike in order to stay off Highway 62, and we do not need further congestion. I realize that building new homes in that area is most likely inevitable, but they should be nicer homes on larger lots. The builder just wants to make all the money he can off this parcel, no matter what it does to the area. Robert and Pamela Ellis. Jim Ferber writes to us, he lives in Creekstone Ridge. I am in favor of this project. I know the developer well, and I know that they do quality work. I believe there are instigators providing incorrect information on the project in hopes of stopping it. Brian Bain, oh, actually, he has nothing to do with the variance, sorry. Kevin and Vicky Ewell from 3700 Cooper's Lane. Right, my husband Kevin and I are the current owners of the property at 3700 Cooper's Lane in Sellersburg, the property in the proposed Cooper's development. As we have aged, we realized it was impossible to maintain our property to the standards we would like. We decided to sell in whole and downsize, spoke to several developers, and after inspecting the homes that were built by James Johns, decided it would be an asset to the neighborhood to have Mr. Johns and his partner develop our land. We felt that the addition of the walking path and lake would be a great selling point to the nice upscale homes they would be building. We understand the reluctance of adjoining property owners to face change, but it is time for us to make a change in our lifestyle, and we feel that approving the Cooper's Crossing development as presented will advance the feel and the community that buyers are looking for today. Carol Ewell also writes, tonight, you will be considering the application from JT Development Group for the proposed Cooper's Crossing subdivision. The 40-acre property has been in our family since 1963. We are at a point in our lives where we are no longer able to keep the property, and we are in full support of the subdivision proposed. The homes are listed between $260,000 and $350,000 and will be built the same as those in Williams Crossing. Such a development will enhance the property values and the community of the surrounding homes and subdivision. We have looked at the finished homes and they are well built and a welcome addition to Jeffersonville housing market. As with time and progress, situations change. The Armstrongs, the Ellingsworths, the Williams, and others have sold their farms, and now it is time for us to do so as well. If the Cooper's Crossing subdivision does not proceed, we will sell to another developer. Thank you for your time, Carol Ewell. That is the written correspondence in front of you today.
Thank you, Chad. One of the comments that you made under T. Gully, you mentioned that it was that the public schools are so crowded. basically that they're having to go to private schools is what the comment should have been. Shelby, do we have anything down there for or against?
Do have one person down here, Vicky Ulis, but she is happy with her letter that was read, and we have no further comments down here.
Tell her we thank her for coming in tonight. At this point in time, we'll close public comment, and we will open up for the board for comments, concerns, or questions. I'd like to address one. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Copperway made a comment that the Planning Commission approved the connection to Creekstone Ridge. We did not. We approved a plan that under the development standards requires them to connect. We didn't really approve the connection. We just approved a plan, in my opinion, that just includes that. So I don't really, I just want to make sure that that's just my personal opinion. Any board members have anything further to add or any questions for the applicant? If not, we can move to findings.
Okay.
I think we're ready.
Okay. The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for variance described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the findings. 1, the variance of the development standards will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community. Mr. McCutcheon.
I agree.
Mr. Avery. Oh, Mr. Avery, you're muted.
I agree.
Thank you. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
I agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Avery.
I agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Thank you very much.
Based on the findings described above, the board does now approve this application. So ordered this 30th day of June, 2020.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. We're moving on to new business. Matt Lovin filed a development standards variance application for a property at number 22 Hawthorne Lane. The property is zoned R2 residential. The proposed request is for an accessory structure in excess of development standards. The docket number is BZA-20-28. Do we have representation here today?
They are here. They're just muted.
Okay.
Mr. Aldridge, can you unmute?
Yes.
Zachary Lovin.
This is Zachary.
Please tell us a little bit about what you're working on there.
Building a pole barn style building, 30 by 40. For when I retire, I hope to put a boat in there and possibly an RV, but that's later to see. I'd like for my stuff to stay nice, and inside a building can be better than being out.
Gotcha. Oh, Matt, did you take the oath?
No, I didn't understand what I was doing there.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Merkley so that we can make sure that this is correct to administer the oath to you, sir, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Merkley?
Yes, if you would raise your right hand and Do you affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will present is the truthful to the best of your knowledge and belief? Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so what you're wanting to do is to build an accessory structure, which is a garage on the property. You want to expand it beyond the required of 1,000 feet. We're going to 1,800 square feet. And also you're going to exceed the required 18 foot to a 20 foot. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So if you don't have any further to add at this point, what I'm going to do is open up for public comment. We'll just kind of move on through the process, and we'll give the board a chance to ask some questions here in just a minute. So we will, just to make this easy, we will group those that are for or against. We'll open up public comment. Chad, do you have anything to add? Letters or received or anything?
I do not.
Okay. And I have been keeping Shelby up so I can see her. Let me see her nod her head. Hold on.
There's nothing down here.
Okay, there she is. All right, thank you very much. So at this point in time, we'll close public comment and we'll open up for the board to ask Mr. Levin any questions that you might have about his accessory structure. If there's no questions, we can move to findings. I think that the board is, I don't see everybody, but I think that the board is probably ready to move to findings. If not, feel free to speak up, but we'll go ahead, Chad, and move forward.
Sounds good. The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for variance described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the following findings. 1, the variance of the development standards will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. The situation shall not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Based on the findings described above, the board does now approve this application, so ordered this 30th day of June 2020. And before we move on, I want to apologize to Mr. Aldridge. I had my papers in the wrong order and asked you to unmute on a case that wasn't yours, so thank you.
So we're coming around to the corner to you. Mr. Levin, you're good to go.
Thank you very much.
All right, you guys have a great one. All right, we're going to move on. Victoria and Mindy Johns with Millennium Builders, LLC, Millennium Builders, LLC, filed a development standards variance application for a property at 400 East Maple Street and 326 Walnut Street. The property is zoned R3, which is residential. The proposed development, Magnolia Row, consists of 5 residential lots. The docket number is BZA-20-29. Do we have representation?
Yes, David Blankenbaker. I'm here with Victoria Johns, 618 East Court Avenue, Jeffersonville, Indiana. Earlier this evening, we received preliminary plat approval for this 5-lot subdivision on the corner of Maple and Walnut Street. It is directly across from St. Luke's United Church of Christ. That happens to be the church that I attend. I think it's going to be a great addition. I don't know, I showed the other board, but I'll show this board the rendering, one of the renderings that they've got here. Beautiful homes. These are going to be proposed to be over $300,000 homes in downtown Jeffersonville, which we think is a really good thing. We do need a couple of, actually, I think just one variance tonight for square footage of the lot. We're asking for 2905 down from the 5,000 minimum. There was some comment earlier in the evening about why don't we make the lots the same size as other downtown lots? Truth of the matter is they are about the same size as most other downtown lots. The other downtown lots are also below the current minimum standard in many, many cases. In addition, these lots are 40 feet wide, and some of the downtown lots are 30 feet wide, or some even less than that. So it's really a depth situation more than anything. And so we put in a rear alley. We have a rear garage, 2-car garage, and rear drive. So I think it'll be really nice for the city. They do a very nice job. I'll take any questions, or Mindy's here if you have any questions for her. I'm sorry, Victoria's here. Mindy is not here.
All right, at this point in time, we'll open up for public comment, both for or against. Chad, do you have anything?
Just a few notes here. Jeff Funk from 409 East Maple Street writes, "Dear Sean, it was nice speaking with you the other day about the plans for 400 East Maple Street. I think, as we discussed, it'll be great that there are some houses built in that area with designs similar to the surrounding architecture. I'm really just against the variance they are asking for that would allow them to squeeze in 5 homes. That alone would make them stand out amongst the properly spaced structures. I understand from the builder's perspective that more houses translate to more profit, but the neighborhood could be transformed forever with this decision and will be around long after those profits are gone. I could see 3 houses put here, but that's all. These are my thoughts in writing as requested by the Department of Planning and Zoning. Thank you, Jeff Funk." I have comments from Dustin White. Dear Board of Zoning Appeals, I am in support of the plan presented to you as submitted by Victoria and Mindy Johns. They have consistently provided great housing products throughout District 1, and I am confident in their ability to produce a great product at this location. I humbly request that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the applications as submitted. And then I have conversations with Tammy Carter. She wanted to state for the record that she is in support of the project so long as there are fences built in the backyards of the properties, as her neighbor or her house abuts the rear of these properties. That is the written record. Thank you.
Just me. Shelby, are you good?
Yeah, there's nothing down here.
Thank you. I keep trying to just help us out here a little bit and mute, and then I forget to push button. At this point in time, we'll close public comment. And does the board have anything that they'd like to add?
When will construction start on these? If all the
Give or take, fall, winter.
Yeah, we don't have a definite time frame. They have closed on the property, but we expect once all the approvals are, will be probably into the fall, maybe late fall.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Move to findings.
All right, we're ready to go. Chad.
Thank you. The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for variance described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the following findings. 1, the variance of the development standards will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and welfare of the community. Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed or be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Based on the findings described above, the board does now approve this application, so ordered this 30th day of June, 2020.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Michael Aldridge and Matthew Madden filed a development standards variance application for a property at 325 Meigs Avenue. The property is zoned R3, which is residential. The proposed request is for a fence in excess of the development standards. The docket number is BZA-20-30. Do we have representation here today?
We do.
And both of you took the oath?
We did, and we
Thank
affirmed
you.
the oath.
Thank you. Feel free to tell us what you want to do.
Okay. So what Michael and I would like to do is to create an 8-foot fence that is approximately 290 to 290 linear feet that will begin at the front portion of our home, go all the way back to the end of our property, to our property line and over, so that we can lengthen lengthen our yard space. We're asking for an additional 2 feet high on the property fence because this fence is not your traditional fence. It is actually a living fence. And we want to, what we will do is we'll build a wood barrier around different 8-foot sections of the fence. And inside on the main portion, I guess you call, of the fence, the face of the fence will be made of hog wire. This will ensure that it keeps our pets, our dog, in our yard and other pets out, because that hog wire is very strong. And then we're going to use special types of vines. I don't think we really know what vines yet. We have some ideas, but vines that will grow up the fence, and we'll let our son and we'll plant them so that we can see it grow. Well, like I said, a living fence.
So yeah, it'll be a living fence instead of like an 8-foot wooden fence. So we'll add just more environmental beauty, something a little non-traditional. If you look around our house, you can see we're a little non-traditional and like things to be a little more artistic and have some color. And so we just want to do something a little bit different with the yard as well.
And we want it, we've done things intentional. We want this fence to attract people. We want the neighborhood to be emboldened and talk about the fence and let that bring neighbors into us and talk to us about it. We did that when we built our free public library in front of our house. And since the day we put that in, we have not had to contribute one book to that library. That's the type of interaction. That's why we moved to Jeffersonville 5 years ago. That's the type of interaction we think this structure will help bring to the neighborhood and beautify the Franklin Commons neighborhood. And I will also tell you that it's actually just one small part of a larger initiative that we have on repainting our house, fixing our roofs, our steps, our porch, our sidewalk, all of this. So this is one part of the beautification of our home and our garden.
That we're undertaking this year.
So the panels, it looks like in the back of our packet, we have a picture of one of the panels that is 8 foot by 8 foot. It looks like the hog, so it's visible through it as the vines can grow into it and through it.
Correct. Yes. Okay. But the good thing about this fence, and we have actually a bit of an addendum to the fence. We can share this with you. We'll do it through a share screen. But this fence will allow our neighbors, should they wish to build a fence on their own property, it will allow them to do so without any hindrance. Can you show that?
I don't know if the Chad, are you going to allow them to share that? Or?
Yeah, it's not showing the document. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not.
We're good.
Okay. There's just another concept, but a similar fence with wire with a little bit less wood. But it is a kind of open fencing, and the intention is that we plant a fast-growing vine on the intervals that would create like a solid green fence.
Green space, I got you.
Green space.
Okay. All right, at this point in time, if you have nothing further for the moment, we're gonna open up for public comment for or against. Chad, do you have anything to add? Letters, anything received?
I do not.
Okay, and I gotta do it for Shelby here. Shelby, we good?
Nothing down here.
Okay. All right, at this point in time, we will close public comment and open up for the board. Does the board have anything to add or any comments or questions?
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, these houses are very close together, and while these vines are growing, they'll not only grow up, but they will grow out. What can be done to prevent these vines from extending over into the neighbors' properties on both sides?
So that depends actually on the type of vines that you use. We've been researching that, and we've found, what was the type of vine that we found?
Virginia creeper is one of them.
Yeah, but the one that had the beautiful flowers, do you remember? Well, anyway, we have actually found vines that won't do that, but are still fast growing. This fence has to use a type of vine that is not doesn't have a thick base to it, because if you have a thick base, it will weigh down the fence, utterly destroying the fence. So we have to be very conscientious of the type of vine that we use.
Well, the other question is you're going up 8 feet.
Yes,
why couldn't this fence be built same kind of design, but just at 6 feet so it would fit in with the neighborhood?
So that's a great question, and we talked about that, and we don't want it just to fit. We want it to be an attraction. We want it to be more to stand out. I mean, that's the whole point of the fence, to be a talking point for the neighborhood. Again, to attract people in, to beautify the neighborhood. So if it's just a typical wooden fence, then it doesn't meet the artistic value that we're looking for. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Good, thank you.
Okay, does any other board member have any questions? If not, we will move to the findings.
Did Stuart have a question?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay. The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for variance described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the following findings. 1, the variance of the development standards will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Clark.
Disagree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Stinson.
Disagree.
Mr. Clark.
Disagree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed, nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Disagree.
Based on the findings described above, the board does now approve this application. So ordered this 30th day of June, 2020.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Joe Flamion, I can't pronounce that one. I apologize. You'll have to straighten me out. With Crystal Springs Homeowners Association, Inc., filed a development standards variance application for a property at 3004 Crystal Springs Boulevard. The property is zoned R1 residential. The proposed development is an expansion of the existing neighborhood clubhouse The docket number is UVA-20-31. Do we have representation?
Mr. Chairman, Jason Copperway with Paul Primavera and Associates here representing the Crystal Springs Homeowners Association. Joe is not here, so I won't tell him if you butchered his name or not.
Yeah, I did.
really don't
Can
know.
you pronounce it for me?
Flamion. I'm not sure exactly either.
All right, thank you. You tell
So,
him
yeah.
you did too.
We're in the same boat.
Thank you.
The Crystal Springs Homeowners Association own 4 lots and parts of 2 others in Crystal Springs, wherein the existing clubhouse and swimming pools have been constructed. There's also an existing tennis court, drive lane, and parking lot. What they're looking to do is turn the existing tennis court into a parking lot. They rent the clubhouse out for various functions, and sometimes they run into a parking issue. And then on the northwest side, they would construct a new basketball court, a new tennis court, and some additional parking there adjacent to Julia Drive. So it's again just greater amenities available for the residents that live in Crystal Springs. Your zoning ordinance, the property is zoned R1. Your zoning ordinance doesn't really deal with clubhouses in neighborhoods, and so this is kind of a new bird, I guess, that we're dealing with. But the construction of these would require a few variances. One would be lot coverage. The requirement is 35% in the R1 zone. We're asking for 58%. Accessory structures, not more than 3 accessory structures. Where we would construct 2 new sport courts, and there are 3 existing accessory structures for a total of 5. Accessory structures should not exceed 1,000 square feet. The tennis court is 7,200 square feet, and the basketball court is a little over 6,200 square feet. Minimum front yard setback for a primary structure would be 25 feet, and we're asking for 15 feet along Julia Court. Your maximum fence height is 6 feet. We're asking for 10-foot chain link fence around the sport court. Again, it's just the nature of having a sport court. And then parking, again, there's no category in your zoning ordinance for residential neighborhood clubhouse. So that's kind of a blanket variance over top of the whole project, just due to the nature of the ordinance. So we think this will be obviously much better amenities for the neighborhood, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Those who are for or against. Chad, do you have anything?
I do not have anything.
Okay. Shelby, you good?
I don't have anything.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll close public comment. Does the board have anything that they want to ask? All right. If not, we'll move to findings.
The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for variance described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the following findings. 1, the variance of the development standards will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Based on the findings described above, the board has now approved this application, so ordered this 30th day of June, 2020.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Clover Communities, Jeffersonville LLC, filed for a special exception use for a property at 2121 and 2123 East 10th Street. The property is zoned M2, which is residential. The proposed development is a retirement apartment community. The docket number is BZA-20-32. Do we have representation today?
Yes. Yep. My name is Rob Jack, and I'm a Senior Development Director with Clover. And I did take the oath earlier tonight.
Thank you. Feel free to tell us what you're going to do.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your time this evening. We are here tonight to request a special exception approval for a retirement community in the M2 zone. And this is for a senior market rate independent living facility of 119 units, 3 stories. And this is on East 10th Street, kind of in between North Haven Elementary School and Storage Express, just so everybody knows what we're talking about. It's across the street from Fire Station number 2. So in the M2 zone, retirement community is a special exception use. M2 is intended, I think, for multifamily and townhouses generally. But we are here tonight to seek approval for our use in that zone. I should mention we do have 3 other facilities under construction in Louisville and 2 more set to start later this fall. So this will kind of round out that Louisville, Indiana market for us.
Okay. At this point in time, we will open up for public comment, both for or against. Chad, do you have anything?
We spoke with Jan Day, who lives at 2013 Ruck Lane. She just had general questions about future development plans and concerns on whether whether Ruck Lane, which is a private drive, will have additional traffic. We sent the draft plan with some notes on it, and she seems much less concerned after review. It was about the only public comment we had about that.
Good. Shelby?
There's nothing down here.
All right. No Facebook or anything?
No Facebook.
All righty. At this point in time, we'll close public comment and we'll open up for the board to ask questions. If the board really doesn't have any questions, we'll move to findings. What we are granting is a special exception use in this one.
Correct. The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for special exception described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the following findings. 1, the special exception will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
2, the requirements and development standards for the requested use as prescribed by this ordinance will be met. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
3, granting the special exception will not subvert the general purposes served by this ordinance and will not permanently injure other property or uses in the same district and vicinity. Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
4, the proposed use will be consistent with the character of the district therein, the spirit intent of the zoning ordinance, and the Jeffersonville Comprehensive Plan. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Based on the findings described above, the board does now approve this special exception. So ordered this 30th day of June, 2020.
Great, thank you.
And back, you're coming back. Clover Communities Jeffersonville LLC filed a development standards variance for a property at 2121 and 2123 East 10th Street. The property is zoned M2 residential. The proposed development is a retirement apartment community. The docket number is BZA 2033. Do we have representation?
Yes. Rob Jack, Senior Development Director with Clover. So same project that we're talking about here. There are 4 variances that we are also seeking tonight, in addition to the special exception. The first is maximum density. In the M2, the max density is 8 development units per acre. We are seeking to increase that to 15 development units per acre to provide for our development. I guess I should mention the property is 12 acres. We're going to cut out a parcel for future development on the frontage of East 10th Street. So that'll reduce the development acreage for the apartments to just over 9 acres. And so that's our maximum density is at 15 units per acre. Average unit size, the ordinance requires 850 square feet average with a minimum of 500. Our units range from 596 to 895. I know Chad and I went back and forth on this. If you take the total building square footage, we're well over the average. If you go individual unit by unit, then a couple of units are less than the 850, but they're all above the minimum 500. The next variance is maximum stories. Our building is 3 stories and 40 feet high to the peak. And the ordinance is limited to 2 stories and 40 feet high to the peak. So we're within the height. Just we have 1 additional story, but certainly within that 40-foot height. The final variance is maximum sign height at 6.5 feet. I think the ordinance is 4 feet, and our typical sign is just over 6 feet. So we're asking for relief on that as well. If you've got any questions, I'll certainly answer them at this time.
In terms of the sign height, that is usually, that's for residential subdivisions and small, apartments. I mean, because this is a little bit more of a commercial development, if you will, and it's along 10th Street, a major commercial corridor, we as planning staff don't have any issues with going for a taller sign.
I have a question. Are these apartments for rent or purchase?
They are for rent, yes.
Okay. Could you tell me about what they're going to rent for?
Yeah, so 1 bedroom is right around $1,100 a month. 2 bedroom, right around $1,250. And then we have some 2 bedroom, 1.5 bath. They're closer to $1,350 or $1,400. And these are all, those numbers could change a little bit, but that's kind of a general range.
Okay.
Okay, at this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Chad, did you have anything, letters or anything?
The only public comment that we had was addressed in the last issue.
There's nothing.
Okay.
Nothing down.
All right. Everything okay? Chad, you okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Computer glitch there. I'm not sure.
I understand. But you got everything in you needed to get in.
Yes.
Okay, at this point in time, we'll close public comment. We'll open up for the board again. Any comments, questions, or concerns from the board?
Do we have anything else in the city with this kind of density?
Yes, actually. I've got stuff downtown that's 40 or 50 dwelling units per acre, if you will. The corner, I think the one that I usually use is the corner of Spring Street and Riverside Drive. There's a small number of apartments right there. It's a 3-story building. It's about 49 dwelling units per acre, but no one would ever bat an eye at it. It's a beautiful little building on a corner, and it is what it is.
Okay.
Its density is very strangely. It's a really odd standard to measure the quality or impact of a project, in my opinion.
It's almost double, so that was why.
Oh, yes.
Okay, if we have no further questions, we will move to the findings.
The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for variance described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the following findings. 1, the variance of the development standards will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Fox,
Agree.
Mr. Avery,
You can also say yes.
Oh, agree.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Agree.
Mr. Clark,
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
2, the use and value of the land adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Avery,
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Agree.
Mr. Fox,
Agree.
Mr. Stinson,
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. The situation shall not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. Mr. Stinson,
Agree.
Mr. Clark,
Agree.
Mr. Fox,
Agree.
Mr. Avery,
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Based on the findings described above, the board does now approve this application, so ordered this 30th day of June, 2020.
Thank you. This would be the last one on the docket for tonight. Kurt Hargrove filed a development standards variance application for a property at 225 Lumen Way. The property is zoned IR, which is River Ridge. The proposed development is a warehouse. The docket number is BZA-20-34. Do we have a representation here tonight?
Yes, Mark Hildenbrand, HWC Engineering, 303 Scribner Drive, New Albany, Indiana, representing Kurt Hargrove with Gray Industrial Realty. And I did take the oath earlier this evening.
Thank you. Feel free to proceed.
So Gray is proposing a speculative warehouse industrial building in the River Ridge Commerce Center. This building is actually the 4th building that they will be doing inside of the Commerce Center, and the one directly adjacent to it to the west is one of their buildings, and then just a little further west, and then there's one further down, 62. So they found a niche in the market for these 260,000 square foot buildings, and they're essentially building the same building that they've built those other times, the same size. Speaking toward the variances that we are requesting tonight, 2 of them deal with the parking located in the front yard of the development, the front setback of the development. This property is relatively narrow for this type of use, and with the building of that size and then the truck docks that are on the one side of the building, it really left us no options other than to have that parking in the front. And then the length of the building and the length of the property, we've got this thing planned where there eventually could be a potential for 2 tenant locations, one at the north side and one at the south side, and typically they have office spaces in those areas, and that's where we've located that parking. So as it says in the documentation, that we do have a second parking lot planned on the rear of the property that would put us down to 50% in the front, 50% in the rear when that parking is completed. The last variance that we are requesting approval for is in regards to the width of the driveway access point, and that is for the truck dock access. And pretty much the majority of the properties there at River Ridge have those wider truck dock access points. Obviously, with the in and out of trucks, having more room is a benefit to that operation. And just to kind of speak towards the regulations as well, we meet all the requirements of the River Ridge Development Authority and previously approved development. Got a development plan approved through their through the standards there at River Ridge. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. I will include them both for or against. Chad, did you have anything?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Shelby, we good? Thank you. Appreciate it. At this point in time, we'll close public comment and we will open up for the board. If the board has any questions, comments, or concerns, Mr. Hildenbrand would be glad to answer those. Does anybody have anything?
I have a question for Chad.
Yes.
Chad, I noticed there's no variances for lights. Did that part of the ordinances or laws change?
Yes, we did. At the last plan commission meeting last month, we changed the variance or the standards for light poles. So this should no longer be an issue in River Ridge.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if no further questions, comments, or concerns, we will move to the findings.
The Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Jeffersonville, having heard the application for variance described above and all opposition from parties claiming to be adversely affected thereby, does now enter the following findings. 1, the variance of the development standards will not be injurious to the public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in a practical difficulty. This situation shall not be self-imposed nor be based on a perceived reduction of or restriction of economic gain. Mr. Avery.
Agree.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Agree.
Mr. Clark.
Agree.
Mr. Stinson.
Agree.
And Mr. Fox.
Agree.
Based on the findings described above, the board does now approve this application. So ordered this 30th day of June, 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the Board of Zoning Appeals. Chad, do you have anything to add?
I just want to let everyone know I am getting ready to announce to City Council next week that the Planning and Zoning Department will be pursuing a full revision of the zoning ordinance. We will be taking the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance and making one general document. I was going to give a presentation to the Plan Commission tonight, but our Plan Commission meeting was really, really long and we just didn't really have time for it. So I'm going to plan to present that to them at the next Plan Commission meeting. I'll send you a reminder. You may just want to tune in to our Plan Commission meeting next month. It actually should be a fairly short one. We don't have too many items on the docket at this time. So it'll be a good time for you to learn about our plans to overhaul what is currently a 20-year-old document and some 24, 25-year-old subdivision regulations. So that will be coming up, so stay tuned.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for hanging in there with us. And at this point in time, we'll make a motion. Anybody have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Y'all have a great evening.
Yep. Bye.